The Ayahuasca King has finally returned for what could very well be his farewell tour, because as of June 7th, Aaron Rodgers has signed a one-year deal worth $13.65 million to play for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Now, of course, with the incentives that teams love to throw in, this contract could potentially be worth nearly $20 million by the end of this season. But of course, the Steelers and Aaron Rodgers are going to need to find a lot more success than what is projected, if any of that is even going to happen, okay? Now, where does the bar sit for this Pittsburgh Steelers team? Well, they are coming off of a 10-7 season, and the team didn't look half bad, especially to start the season. Originally, the Steelers were going to begin last year's campaign with Russell Wilson as QB, but he was dealing with some nagging injuries, so Justin Fields, who was supposed to be the backup, took over. The team went 4-2 under Justin Fields. They looked pretty decent. He had 5 touchdowns, 1 interception, threw for about 1,000 yards. But when Russell Wilson was ready to go, Mike Tomlin was more than ready to just throw him out there. And if there was one issue this team had, it was consistency on the offensive end. Now, if you thought the momentum was going to slow down with Russell Wilson now in the starting lineup, you're wrong, because the team would go on a 4-game winning streak with a bye week in the middle. And all of a sudden, the Steelers found themselves at 8-2 by week 11. They look like one of the best teams in the AFC, and all of a sudden, the critics that had been shitting on this team on a day-to-day basis in the media throughout the entirety of the offseason, through training camp, through preseason, yeah, those voices kind of just went away. And at their peak, this team sat at 10-3, and it felt as though Russell Wilson found his forever home, like he had finally redeemed himself after leaving the Seattle Seahawks. This was really a place that Russell Wilson could retire in. But that isn't what happened, because the end of the regular season was a very rough stretch for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Not only did they have to face 2 divisional opponents, they had to go up against the 2 best teams in the NFL. First came the Philadelphia Eagles, then it was the Baltimore Ravens, Kansas City Chiefs, and the Cincinnati Bengals. All 4 of those games ended in a loss for this team. And though they still did make the playoffs with a 10-7 record, they weren't getting a bye week because they had fallen off, and they were also going to have to go up against the Baltimore Ravens in the wild card round, which meant that they were heading into the playoffs against a divisional opponent with 0 momentum, and you could pretty much expect how that game was going to play out. It was over by halftime. Now, I'm a big fan of playoff football, but I wouldn't make my worst enemy sit through that game because it was boring as fuck. By the halftime, the Steelers were already down 21-0, and the Baltimore Ravens didn't stop scoring. It would end up being 14-28. Russell Wilson would push the offense forward, but it was a little too late at that point. And now, Mike Tomlin just served up another one of his mediocre seasons, where the team ends above or at 500, and they lose in the wild card round. This was the Steelers' 4th wild card round loss in the last 5 years. And that 1 year that's missing, they didn't go to the second round. No, they missed the playoffs entirely. So it's been rough for Steeler Nation, but maybe, just maybe, Aaron Rodgers changes all of that. They haven't had any QB stability at all since Big Ben retired, and even then, Big Ben was rough his last few years. And we'll talk about what Aaron Rodgers in Pittsburgh looks like in a second. But for right now, I want to remind you guys to slow down, like the video, and subscribe to the channel. Every subscription is greatly appreciated. We're on the road to 10,000, so please subscribe. Now let's talk about how Aaron Rodgers fits into this Mike Tomlin-led offense, because it's been known that he can be a bit of a wild card at times and kind of just go out there and do his own thing, especially now that he's a veteran and has played more minutes in the NFL than 99% of everybody on earth. So you can kind of trust him out there. However, he works best when he's got great chemistry with the head coach. Not saying that the chemistry wasn't all that good in New York, but let's be honest, him and Robert Saleh didn't click, and I think that is what hurt his 2-year stint with the New York Jets, along with that torn ACL at the beginning of his first season. but when he was really popping off in Green Bay, it's when he and the head coach were one. Him and Mike McCarthy had great chemistry. They worked really well together for about a decade, up until the end. Then comes in Matt LaFleur, and you would assume the two worked very well because Aaron Rodgers had 2 MVPs very late into his career, and that was with Matt LaFleur as his head coach. So it all comes down to how Aaron Rodgers and Mike Tomlin are going to be working together. Now, everybody knows that Mike Tomlin has a very run-heavy offense, and so Aaron Rodgers is going to have to abide by that because this is Mike Tomlin's team, and Aaron Rodgers is just a new piece to the puzzle. And talking about new pieces to the puzzle, he isn't the only thing that's changed out there in Pittsburgh, because if we were to take a look at their running backs, well, there's no more Najee Harris. He left in free agency. The team still has Jalen Warren, but he's no top 20 running back. The person who really excites me in that running back room is their newly added 3rd-round pick out of Iowa. I'm talking about Caleb Johnson. He was an All-American in 2024 for the Hawkeyes. He went out, and in the 12 games that Iowa played, he rushed for 1,537 yards on only 240 attempts, averaging about 6.4 yards per carry, and he had 21 touchdowns, which is a big improvement from his first 2 years. His freshman and sophomore season, he was seen as more of a backup. If anything, he didn't get nearly half the reps that he was getting in his junior season, and that really elevated him onto everybody's draft boards. There's a reason he went in the 3rd round, which is considerably high, especially for a running back. The Pittsburgh Steelers knew their needs heading into the draft. They knew that they let Najee walk, so of course they go and they fill those holes by getting a guy like Caleb Johnson. I think he'll be a great pairing alongside Aaron Rodgers, just another young player for Aaron Rodgers to help develop and mentor, and because he isn't another quarterback, he won't feel threatened this time. Shout out Jordan Love. But again, this isn't the only new addition because things just keep changing for this Pittsburgh Steelers team. They go out and they trade for DK Metcalf. They give up a 2nd-round pick in 2025, a few draft pick swaps, whatever you want to call it, and a 5-year extension worth $150 million is handed out to DK Metcalf. He's 27 years old, in the middle of his prime. The fact that this man was available is beyond shocking. The Steelers are in a win-now mode. They know they have a more than capable defense on their hands, a top 10 defense if we're going off of stats from last season. And if you're a fan of the NFL, you know great defenses don't last very long, so you have to hold on to them and make the most of it while you've got them, which is why they've gone out and made a move like getting a star in DK Metcalf. Now, his numbers did decline last season, but I do think he is on the road to redemption, especially now that he's got an even better QB behind him in Aaron Rodgers. No shot at Geno Smith, but come on. Even Aaron Rodgers on his worst day is better than Geno Smith, to be fair. Now, in last season, he went out, he had only 5 touchdowns, about 992 yards, but if there's one thing that DK Metcalf can do, it is stay healthy. Because in these 6 seasons for the Seattle Seahawks, DK Metcalf, the least amount of games he played was 15. Now, he did only play 15 last season and only start 12, but it wasn't due to no major injuries, so I wouldn't be worrying too much about DK Metcalf. And if you thought that there was going to be anybody taking away targets from this guy in Pittsburgh, you're wrong. Because the Steelers just went ahead and shipped off George Pickens to the Dallas Cowboys. Because for whatever reason, whenever the Pittsburgh Steelers develop a receiver, bring them up through their draft process and then have them there for the first few seasons, they always end up going crazy. Or they end up falling off for whatever reason as soon as they leave Pittsburgh. And Mike Tomlin just kind of is aware of this. It happened with Antonio Brown, Juju Smith-Schuster, Chase Claypool, and now George Pickens. George Pickens is a bit of a diva, and I don't think that the Steelers wanted to deal with all that noise, especially because they already have a guy like Aaron Rodgers on the team who is going to bring in a shit ton of attention anyway. So just get that bad juju out the locker room now before the season starts. That's basically what they did there. Plus, they feel like the team is more than ready heading into this new NFL season. I can't wait to see what the Steelers look like because they may have gone 10-7 last season, but some of the wins were a bit sketchy, and this new offense has totally been revitalized. It's been rejuvenated. I know that the team kinda got older, but still, I feel as though that this team has a bit more energy, a bit more bounce to them. We'll see what Aaron Rodgers does. Now, if this all goes haywire, if the team ends up failing, then Aaron Rodgers better head into retirement after this season, and do the Steelers fire Mike Tomlin is the biggest question. But that's a video for another day. So I'll catch y'all later. Much love. Deuces.